Angelicus and its Spurb.
Hello and welcome to episode 62 of Spurbs Herbs. And today we're going to be talking about supporting and releasing formulas. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today we are going to be looking at another formula category, a whole category of formulas. We did one just recently, and it's actually fairly similar to this. It's in the same category, but we're actually going to be looking at a different subcategory. And today's subcategory is going to be supporting and releasing formulas. So this is an interesting category of formulas that do almost two opposite things in Chinese medicine. They tonify the body while releasing the exterior. We will look at the underlying Chinese theory and discuss formulas in this interesting category. And as usual, we will be exploring something a little different. Today, we are going to do a deep dive into one of, if not the most important books in Chinese medicine, the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng, or Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon, or also translated as Inner Classic, Internal Classic, Inner Classic, Internal Classic. These are all different translations. You'll see that as we go along. Please stay tuned. It's going to be a doozy today. Before we do that, I wanted to talk to you about a new webinar series that I've started. It's called Integrative Nutrition, and it does include a lot of supplementation and some Chinese medicine and all that. And we've started doing them. I've done 2 of them live so far. We've got probably at least another dozen to go or so, at least 10 to 12 more to go. So we'll be doing this throughout the coming year. But I wanted to let you guys know, my podcast listeners, to know about it before we went too far into it. And we will be covering biomedical and Chinese concepts of nutrition to a certain extent, and explore the complementary and alternative concepts that are part of the modern supplement industry. I've only done 2 episodes of these. I've only prepped 2 episodes of these, and I've already used it multiple times with my patients. I'm actually flabbergasted at how it just lines up. It's just really interesting. This series will be 1 live class per month covering a category of nutrition, and will include some basic biochemistry, nutrition, and supplements available on the market. And that was really sort of my big goal in doing this, was like, you go in to, you walk into a Sprouts or a GNC or whatever supplement company you want. There's all these names that I recognize because I understand the biochemistry, but I don't know what they're doing as supplements. I don't know if they work as supplements. So that's really, I wanted to talk about sort of the underlying theory and get into it. Do these supplements really work? What are they supposed to be doing? So that's a lot of what's going on here. So in other words, it's going to be the perfect combination of biochemical nutrition, supplements, Chinese medicine, and real-world use cases. If you are a practitioner of any stripe or just interested in nutrition, this is the series for you. And you can sign up for the first class or the whole series at www.integrativemedicinecouncil.org. That's Integrative Medicine Council, COUNCIL.org. Like I said, I'll only be teaching each class live 1 time. After that, it will only be available as a recording. So don't miss this opportunity to learn about a topic all our patients ask about and get a firm understanding of the basics of integrative nutrition. So with that, let's get into our little something different today. In the last episode of Spurbs Herbs, we discussed Taoism. And with that discussion, we've introduced the 3 major philosophies influencing Chinese medicine, which of course are Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. I mentioned I wanted to talk about the 4th major Chinese philosophy, legalism. However, as I was looking over my notes on this philosophy, I realized it had a large influence on early Chinese governance, but is not recognized as a major influence in Chinese medical development. So, what I did recall was legalism, Taoism, Confucianism all developed during the same period of time in China called the Warring States period from 475 to 221 BCE. This is also a time that's called the flowering of the 100 schools of thought. And so we see that in all these different sort of philosophies that came out during this. And of course, these are just the four that had major influences. There are a lot of others that came out that didn't have major influences. So really a big flowering of a lot of different ways of thinking, which if you think about it with Warring States period, of course, it's not a peaceful period of time. And when people, there's a lot of war and upheaval and migrants and all this sort of stuff, there's a lot of people going, okay, can we do this better? Is there another way to look at this? How can we prevent this from happening? How can we stop it? How can we prevent it from happening? And of course, that triggers this flowering of the 100 thoughts. That was 100 philosophies that happened during this period of time. Something else happened to Chinese medicine at this time. So remember, we're talking about Warring States period 475 to 221 BCE. After that, we now have unification of China for the first time, and that's a whole nother thing. We'll get into that maybe at some point when we talk about all this stuff. But what's interesting, remember that, medicine, Chinese medicine just didn't pop up overnight. It had been being developed for thousands of years. It has roots in ancient Chinese shamanism and things along those lines, which is a whole nother discussion we can have. And it's handed down orally. It's going down through generations, but there weren't a lot of books at this period of time. There were no printing presses or anything, so there wasn't just a lot of books in general, but books were still important. So during this period of time, probably towards the later part of the Warring States period, around 300 BCE or something along those lines, something happened and it was absolutely foundational, and that was the writing of the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng, the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon or Inner Classic. And this is very important. It was probably collected during this period as opposed to one person writing it. It was probably many people, and the writings were put together. And it really is, it's existent today, which is a big thing. There were lots of books that were around at this period of time, but they were all at certain parts, because there wasn't the printing press. They weren't widely distributed. They were destroyed at some point during war. There was one time an emperor, burned down the central library, which always seems to happen historically at different parts of the world. And so we lost a lot of that information. So there we go. So this is existing and it's foundational. It has all the basic beginnings and philosophy and applications of Chinese medicine as well. It was organized as a dialogue between Huáng Di, which is literally translates as Yellow Emperor, so that's where it comes from, and the Yellow Emperor was the sort of mythical emperor going back in time. So this is he was supposed to. There's an actual timing, I think 1500. We may come across it like 1500 BCE. So at least 1,000 years before this was supposedly collected and or written. And so it's a dialogue between him and his physicians. Mainly the main physician is Qi Bo. And so often the way it's set up is, the emperor goes, the book writes, Yellow Emperor asked of his physician XYZ, and Qi Bo responded by saying ABC. That was sort of how it's put together. It's divided into two main sections. The first one is the Su Wen, or plain questions. And you'll often see like a translation, maybe Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng Su Wen, or maybe Huáng Di. That's usually how you see it. So Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng Su Wen. So it's the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon or Internal Classic, plain questions. And then the other main section is the Ling Shu, or the Magic Pivot. And so these are two things. And both of them have 81 chapters, which is significant. If you remember back to our last episode, we talked about the Tao Te Ching a little bit, which is sort of the foundational book for Taoism. That has 81 chapters. 81 is a very magical number. It's 9. It's the square of 9. 9 is the square of 3. So it's a really important number. So 81. Each of these have 81 chapters, which has some significance. It's the earliest text with a complete presentation of the fundamental basic theories of Chinese medicine. And these include acumoxotherapy. So acumoxa is acupuncture and moxibustion. We've talked about moxibustion, I believe. We got into moxibustion in an early episode. And if you really want to get down to acupuncture theory, it's not acupuncture theory, it's acumoxa theory. They're the same thing, different sides of the same coin, sort of yin and yang of each other. So a much more technically accurate way, instead of saying acupuncture, we should be saying acumoxa, but no one understands that, so we say acupuncture. So acumoxa therapy is one of those fundamental basic theories. Channel network vessel theory, diagnosis, both diseases and pattern discrimination, pathomechanisms, how do we get sick? Viscera bowel theory. So this is bringing in the yin and yang organs and how they actually interact and are important. 5-phase theory, which we have covered in a previous Spurbs Herbs, and nourishing life or Yangshan disease, Yangshan exercises. And these things include that includes like meditation and qigong and things along those lines. We talked about it real briefly in our last episode, just mentioning it, not really talking about it, but that would be a great episode in and of itself, is just to discuss Yangshan, nourishing life practices, because it has it's a fundamental part of Taoism and fundamental part of Chinese medicine. So Curran, who wrote a little summary of the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng, says the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng is an ancient treatise on health and disease, said to have been written by the famous Chinese emperor Huang Di around 2600 BC. I said 1500, so this is saying 2600. Again, different sources may say different things, but the 1500 was off the top of my head, so I'd take the 2600 here, BCE. However, Huang Di is a semi-mythical figure, and the book probably dates from later, around 300 BC, and may be a compilation of the writings of several authors, as we mentioned. The strength of the work, and possibly the reason for its widespread influence and its place even today, not just as a reference source for those interested in traditional Chinese medicine, is that its basic ideas are still valid and of appeal to anyone interested in understanding more about the custom and practice of medicine. So in other words, it contributes to medicine, not just Chinese medicine. He continues, the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng recognizes that for everyone, the processes of the body follow certain natural rules, and that health and disease are influenced by natural aging processes as well as the environment. All this needs to be understood to ensure accurate diagnosis and specific treatment for a condition. So that's his summary of what the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng is. Here we have a bit of an excerpt, and this is from Paul Unschold's book, Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng Su Wen, Nature, Knowledge, Imagery in an Ancient Chinese Medical Text. If you're not familiar with Paul Unschold, he is one of the most renowned Chinese medical historians. He's written many, many books. If you're interested in the history of Chinese medicine, he is a technical expert. There's others, but he's definitely one of the first that translated these and explained them. Great. So here's from his translation, and this is what he says. This is from the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng. So once Huang Di asked the heavenly master, I have heard that people of high antiquity, in the sequence of spring and autumn, all exceeded 100 years. But in their movements and activities, there was no weakening. As for people of today, after 1/2 of 100 years, the movements and activities of all of them weaken. Is this because the times are different? Or is it that people have lost this ability? Huang Di asked, I have heard that when healers in antiquity treated a disease, they simply moved the essence and changed the qi. They were able to invoke the origin, and any disease came to an end. When the people of nowadays treat a disease, they employ toxic drugs to treat their interior, and they employ needles and pointed stones to treat their exterior. Some are healed, others are not healed. Why is this so? I don't know about you. They seem like really invalid questions. You know, like I want to know the answers to these. So in another translation here in the Plain Questions 1, chapter 1, it's called in chapter 1, it's called The Treatise of Heavenly Truth from Remote Antiquity. When a male is 8 years old, kidney qi is replete, is full, and development of his teeth continues. At 2 times 8, heavenly 10th flows. That is really seminal fluid, so semen. Heavenly 10th flows. Essential qi overflows and drains. Yin and yang are harmonious, and he can produce children. At 3 times 8, kidney qi is completely balanced. The sinews and bones are powerful and strong, and the true teeth develop to their utmost. At 4 times 8, the sinews and bones flourish and are exuberant, and the flesh is full and vigorous. At 5 times 8, kidney qi is debilitated, the hair falls out, and the teeth are desiccated. At 6 times 8, yang qi is debilitated above, the face is parched, and the hair at the temples turns gray. At 7 times 8, liver qi is debilitated. The sinews are unmovable. Heavenly tenth is exhausted. Essence is scant. The kidney viscus is debilitated, and the bodily form is completely exhausted. Doesn't sound really good. That's my next year, actually, in age-wise. And finally, at 8 times 8, the teeth and hair fall out. So there's a thing. And there's a similar description of women as well. And but women are 8 is yang, 7 is yin. So it's 7 times 7, and it goes through all these stages as well with women. And so that's a brief introduction to the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng, the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon, a fundamental book in the Chinese medical canon and still relevant to its practice today. And if you know, in Chinese medicine, one of the things I always hear as an educator, as a dean of a program, students always wanted to have more classics. They just wanted to really study these classics because that's where it originally came from. And then I'd say to them, look, I know you don't feel like you're getting them, but all the textbooks you're reading are based on the classics. You're getting the classics. They didn't really like that, but then as soon as they start reading the classics, they can be a little confusing, especially if you don't have a whole bunch of the theory behind you before reading them. And so, you know, without a guide, without someone helping you through that process, it can be difficult to do. But the classics are still the classics, and they're classics for a reason. They really do. As I dive into the classics more and more, my Chinese medicine gets better. And with that introduction to another important aspect of Chinese medicine and herbology, let's discuss today's herbal formulas. So today's topic is supporting and releasing formulas. And Scheid et al., remember Scheid is one of our main formula textbooks that we use. Actually calls this category of formulas that formulas that release exterior disorders with interior deficiency. And the reality is this is a subcategory, so we're going to get to that in just a second. So instead of saying supporting and releasing formulas, they say formulas that release exterior disorders with interior deficiency. So the idea was supporting and releasing, supporting the inside, the internal, while releasing the external. So there you go. And then Chen and Chen more specifically calls it, so that's where I got this, supporting and releasing formulas, but they actually call it supporting the upright, they put that in brackets, and releasing in brackets the exterior formula. So supporting the upright, which is our internal qi, and then releasing the exterior formulas. So these formulas are used to treat an external disease in a person with an internal deficiency or vacuity. Same word, deficiency, vacuity, different translations again. And it's weird because our main books still will use deficiency, but there's something called the Practical Dictionary of Chinese Medicine, which was designed to kind of standardize language in Chinese medicine, and they use the word vacuity. So you'll see some books are very technical and will use the word vacuity. And there's books like Scheid who, you know, they said, yeah, we understand the rationale basically for that dictionary. We just don't think it flows as well when we're writing a book. So we're going to keep with deficiency. And so as I was going through school, that book was not, the dictionary wasn't around. So we used deficiency all the time. And then over the decades now, this dictionary has come out and you see the use of the word vacuity much more often. And both of our texts put these formulas as a subcategory under the category of formulas that release the exterior according to Scheid, or exterior releasing formulas from Chen Chen. Same thing, they just move the words around a little bit. So let's start our discussion today by looking at the overall category of formulas that release the exterior. We did discuss this in episode 55, and here are some excerpts from that episode. So I basically used the same text, but I cut out some of the finer details, so it's a little bit broader. So here's, there we go. Under this category are formulas that release early stage exterior disorders, formulas that release exterior wind cold, formulas that release exterior wind heat, and formulas that release exterior disorders with interior deficiency. Now, all this is from Scheid's book. They would have slightly different names under Chen and Chen's translations and his subcategories as well. But they're similar. They're almost exactly the same. Just some of the word choices are a little bit different. So as usual, Scheid et al. Have a great introduction to these formulas and why they are important. And here's what he says. When a pathogenic influence first penetrates the body, it tends to cause a disorder of the exterior. In this context, the term exterior, biao, denotes the superficial layers of the body comprised of the skin and muscles. These are perfused by the body's protective qi, which is fierce and hot in nature, and whose task it is to warm and defend against penetration into the body by external pathogens. If a pathogenic influence lodges in this aspect of the body, it not only obstructs the normal physiological diffusion of qi and fluids there, but encourages the body to move more protective qi toward the exterior in an attempt to push out the invading pathogen. For this reason, exterior disorders are characterized by fever and chills, indicating obstruction of normal physiological warming, even as protective yang in the exterior tends towards excess. Head and body aches, indicating obstruction of qi and fluids in the most yang, or i.e. exterior portions of the body, and a floating pulse, indicating the movement of protective yang toward the exterior. Since wind is the vehicle by which other external pathogenic influences enter the body via the exterior, it is involved in most exterior disorders, especially those involving cold and heat. Thus, it is said that wind is the leader of the 100 diseases, or feng wei bai bing zhi zhang. The symptoms associated with an exterior disorder indicate that the body is actively trying to overcome obstruction of the qi dynamic by one or more of the 6 pathogenic influences. Treatment in Chinese medicine seeks to support these physiological reactions through strategies that release the pathogenic influence from the exterior, which is in Chinese jie biao. For this purpose, one deploys light, acrid, moving herbs that unblock obstruction, diffuse the protective qi, and disseminate fluids to vent pathogenic influences back toward the outside. No other strategy will prevent the pathogenic influence from penetrating more deeply into the body. Often, but not always, this results in sweating. The term release from the exterior was first described in chapter 5 of the basic questions. This is what we're talking about. Su Wen. This is the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng Su Wen. So the Huáng Dì basic question, it just says basic questions. And this is a quote from there. If a person harbors a pathogen, the body becomes soaked as the movement of protective qi to the exterior transforms fluids into sweat. Hence, when the pathogen is at the level of the skin, use sweating to discharge it. So we're not quite getting at the interior stuff here yet. This is all about the exterior. And so sweating is important and is a way to do it, but can deplete the center, the interior. So if you have interior deficiency, it can damage it if you just release the exterior. So that's where these formulas are going to come in, which we're going to see in a few minutes. So going back to what Scheid said, successful use of the formulas discussed in this chapter will be aided by paying attention to the following principles. I really like these principles. There's a few of them, but I think they bear repeating. So first, accurate diagnosis is essential. If an interior disorder develops before the exterior has been released, the practitioner must choose between releasing the exterior first or treating the exterior and interior simultaneously. that's where our herbs today, our formulas today, are going to work. The formulas in this chapter are inappropriate for treating disorders solely of the interior, expressed rashes, or edema due to deficiency. Likewise, it is important to be clear about the precise nature of the pathogenic influence to be released, as this determines the choice of formula. One must also be cognizant of the type of sweating to expect from a particular formula. Second, most of these formulas should be cooked briefly. They treat acute disorders and are prepared as decoctions or powders. They contain substances that are light and volatile in nature, which, if subjected to too much heat, lose their efficacy. So one of the things which we're not getting into in all of the formulas that we're going to talk about today, but they have sort of very specific instructions for preparation. And some of the herbs are often cooked first, and then the others are added later. And that's because when we're dealing with interior deficiencies, some of those herbs can be what we call cloying, and they need to be cooked well. But those herbs that are released in the exterior, we would kill a lot of their action here, according to the second principle here. So we don't want to cook them as long. So there can be some complicated instructions on how to cook these formulas that we're going to be talking about today. Third, formulas taken hot after meals will provide the best results. Sweating is further encouraged by instructing the patient to bundle up after taking the medicine, as the goal of sweating is not sweating itself, but to assist the function of the protective qi. Only a slight sweat over the entire body is needed to release the exterior. Excessive sweating dissipates the qi and fluids, which in our subcategory we really want to avoid doing, because that's where there's deficiencies going on. Fourth, the formula and dosage should be adjusted to the individual's constitution, local climate, and season. For example, a person who sweats easily, lives in a warm climate, and contracts an illness during the spring or summer requires only mild treatment. On the other hand, a person who does not sweat easily, lives in a cold climate, and contracts an illness in the autumn or winter requires stronger treatment. So that's sort of part of the overall releasing the exterior category. Now let's get into our specific subcategory of supporting and releasing formulas. And again, Scheid and his team have a great introduction to that. So let's see what Scheid says. The formulas in this subcategory address those cases in which a person suffering from interior deficiency contracts a disease of external origin, and where the ensuing disorder is characterized by symptoms of both excess and deficiency. So before we get into that too much, let's just take a second here and think about this for a second. We often in Western medicine will say things like, don't go out in the cold, you'll catch a cold. Don't get wet and cold, stay warm, all those sort of things. Don't go out with wet hair, sort of things along those lines. But in a certain way, we understand in Western medicine, we know that if you were to release a cold virus in a big room of people, not everyone's going to get sick. Some will get sick, some won't. And what they say is that often, we often in Western medicine will absolutely emphasize the viral factor. In other words, we'll say that if you're exposed, you're going to get it. But we also know to a certain extent that some people, when exposed, aren't going to get it because their internal defenses are so good. They're healthy, or they have specific genes sometimes, or whatever it is that helps protect them against whatever that virus is. And that is a way we can kind of think of as, being what we're going to see here. Chen really emphasizes upright qi, which is that qi that really kind of helps strengthen our center and helps us push out these sort of things. If we have strong upright qi, then an external wind can't attack us, or in Western terms, virus won't sink in. And so the idea is we still have in Western medicine this idea that if you're deficient, if you are somehow compromised in health, you're more likely to get a bug. Let's just say bug in general in this case. And so that's sort of the concept here, is that If you are deficient internally, if something's wrong, that you're not as strong as you should be, you're vacuous, have vacuity, then you're more likely to get an external attack. So you're there. So you got the external attack, you're internally vacuous. So what are we going to do with it? That's where these formulas come into play. So the complexity, let's going back to the quote, the complexity of these disease patterns requires the use of formulas that are themselves complex and that they combine herbs that release the excess from the exterior with herbs that tonify the deficiency in the interior. This is one example of using the method of supporting the normal with dispelling the pathogen, and this in Chinese is Fuzhang Chu Xie. Continuing with Shide. With the exception of the patterns discussed here, these two classes of herbs would rarely be used together. Tonifying herbs are ordinarily contraindicated for exterior conditions, as are exterior releasing herbs in cases of interior deficiency. They make each other worse, generally. The particular formulation of herbs in these prescriptions is based on whether the underlying deficiency is one of qi, blood, yin, or yang. These are called the four substances. And so if any of those are deficient, that can strongly weaken the individual and make them prone to disease states or patterns. Qi and yang deficient patients will tend to be those invaded by wind, cold, and dampness. For this reason, formulas that treat these conditions combine acrid warming, or acrid meaning spicy, warming herbs that disperse pathogens from the exterior, such as ephedra herba or ma huang, Notopterygi, Rhizoma su radix or Qiang huo, Sapashnacovia radix or Feng feng, or Perilla folium, Zisu ye, with qi tonics such as Astragalite radix or Huang qi, and ginseng radix, Ren shen, or herbs that warm the interior such as Aconites radix lateralis preparata or Fudza, and Asari radix et Rhizoma Shi Shin. So these are all just individual herbs that can be used here. So, there we go. Blood and yin deficient patients, on the other hand, are more prone to invasion by wind heat, or if wind cold invades, require strategies that do not emphasize sweating, as this would further damage the essences. For that reason, the formulas used to treat such patterns combine herbs that enrich the yin and nourish the blood, such as radix romania glutinose or shengdi huang. Just realized I have to do that. Okay. Ophiopagonis radix or mymendong, and Polygonati adoriati rhizoma yuju, with acrid cooling or slightly warming herbs that gently vent pathogens from the exterior, such as Menthe haplocalicis herba or boha. That's field mint. We've had spurb herbs on several of these at this point. Soja semen preparatum dan do chur. That is actually fermented soybean, and we had a spurb herbs on that one too. Or Alii fistulosi bulbus or song bai. That's actually green onion. So green onion, prepared soybeans. Sounds like miso soup to me. All right, so that's supporting and releasing formulas according to Scheid. Chen has their own 2 cents in here as well. And they say these formulas are used for constitutionally deficient patients who are attacked by Liu Yin, or the 6 exogenous factors. This situation presents 2 dilemmas. First, exterior releasing formulas induce diaphoresis, or sweating, to dispel exterior exogenous factors, but may in the process damage yin and body fluids, especially in individuals who already have underlying deficiencies. Second, individuals who have underlying deficiencies often do not have enough zhang upright qi and body fluids, sweat, and are often unable to push out the exterior pathogens even when they take exterior releasing herbs. Therefore, in order to safely dispel exterior pathogenic factors in deficiency patients, the underlying constitution must be supported simultaneously. Supporting and releasing formulas usually consists of both exterior releasing herbs and qi or yang tonifying herbs to accomplish both goals. Herbs commonly used to support young upright qi include renshen, radix et rhizoma ginseng, and gansao, radix et rhizoma glycericerae. That's licorice, by the way. Formulas that simultaneously support the upright and release the exterior include Baidu San, or overcome pathogenic influences powder, Zai Zhao San, renewal powder, and Songbai Qi Wei Yin, or scallion decoction with 7 ingredients. So we're going to be talking about a lot of these. Okay, so let's get into these formulas. Our first formula, and probably the exemplar of this sort of subcategory, definitely in my experience, the most commonly used of these, just because it's the combination of qi deficiency with an external attack is very common. So it's called ginseng powder to overcome pathogenic influences, or renshen baidu san. And like I said, this formula is one of the first formulas thought of in this category. Is comprised. It's actually a fairly large formula, and it's comprised. You would think renshen, because it's in the name of the formula, would be the first herb, and it's not. I don't even think it's the emperor herb. I might be wrong on that, but it's comprised of Notab Tirji, Rhizoma su radix, or Qiang Huo, Angelica pubescentis radix, Du Huo. Together, they're often called the two Huos. There's Chuanxiang Rhizoma, Chuanxiang, Bupluri radix, or Chai Hu, Platycody radix, Jiegong, bran fried Auranti fructus, or Fu Chao Zhika, Pusidani radix, Qian Hu, ginseng radix. Finally, we have our ginseng renshen, Poria, which is Fu Ling, Glycericerae radix, or Gansao licorice. And it's recommended to cook it with Zingiberis rhizoma recens, Shenjiang, that's fresh ginger, and Menthe haplocalcisis herba boha, that's field mint. It's not peppermint, slightly different. It's field mint. And its functions are to it releases the exterior, dispels wind and dampness, and augments the qi. And Chen similarly say this formula releases the exterior through diaphoresis, dispels wind, cold, and dampness, and tonifies qi. Our next formula in this category is a tough one for us. It's a really useful formula. It's the Phaedra asarum aconite accessory root decoction, or Ma Huang Xishin Fuzhi Tang. And that's the herbs in it. We're going to talk about that in a second. This is for exterior cold in a patient with pre-existing yang deficiency. So they get an attack of cold while they're already kind of on the cold side. Or they're definitely on the cold side. The formula is exactly what the name says. Ephedra herba Ma Huang, Aconite radix lateralis preparata, Zhifudza, and Asari radix et rhizoma shishin. Now, right there with that list, we have lots of problems of herbs. This is not an easily found herbal formula, at least in the US and in developed countries, because Ma Huang is effectively banned from developed countries. Fudza, not banned, and you can still get it, but some people look askance at it. It can be toxic. That's why it needs to be prepared. That's what preparata means. And so some developed countries actually do ban it, so it's a little bit difficult. And then we have Asari radix rhizoma shishin. This has been banned. It's kind of gone off and on, and I don't know where it is at this point. And when I say banned, it's not officially banned. The FDA doesn't ban it, but what has happened is we're not allowed to import it at certain points in time. So I think we're okay with it right now. It's been associated with some liver damage, but then they realized it was actually another herb that can adulterate the shishin. So it was like an herb that was sold as shishin, but it wasn't shishin. So it's a little bit difficult. Again, all three of these are probably considered amongst the most dangerous of the Chinese herbs we have. So it's interesting that they're all in one formula for this. And the instructions say cook the Zhifudza, the aconite, for 30 to 60 minutes first, which is kind of typical to kind of lower the toxicity of it. So. And this assists the yang and releases the exterior according to Scheid, while Chen says it strengthens yang and releases the exterior, so very similar. Our next formula is renewal powder, or Zai Zhao Zhan, And this is externally contracted when cold with pre-existing qi and yang deficiency, which is a combination. There's one way you can look at those four substances is on a continuum, and you have yin and blood on one side, and that continues. So blood, you have blood deficiency, and as that gets worse, it goes into yin deficiency. On the other side, you have qi deficiency, and as that gets worse, it goes into yang deficiency. So it's sort of a spectrum. So this has a lot of herbs as well. A lot of the herbs we've already talked about, like we've already talked about Astragalus radix or Huang Qi, radix ginseng ren shen, Aconites radix lateralis preparata, Shervudza again, Adian cinnamomum ramulus or guager, this is cinnamon twig, Asari radix at Rhizoma shishin, there's that shishin again, No top pterygy, Rhizoma su radix, Qianghuo, Chuanshang rhizoma, Chuanshang. So all of these herbs we've talked about already. Here's a new one for us in this formula. Sapashnacovia radix feng feng. Our last episode, I think, was on this. So a really good herb. It's a warm, release the exterior herb. We have dry fried radix peony or chow xiao yao. We have glycericerae radix gansao. That's that licorice again. And baked Zingiberis rhizoma recens. So this is wei xingjiang. So this is fresh ginger that has been baked. And jujube fructus or dazao, that's Chinese dates. Again, I've mentioned in the past, like shenjiang, so fresh ginger, dazao, dates, and gansao, licorice. Those are, we always call them the three amigos in our formulas. They're very good for harmonizing the formula, but each of them actually, the dates and the licorice are both very tonifying in and of themselves. And the shenjiang is very harmonizing and helps the stomach, and is actually in the category of warm and release the exterior herbs. So it can be very relevant here as well. And this formula tonifies the yang, augments the qi, induces sweating, and releases the exterior. And Chen similarly say it strengthens yang and benefits qi and releases the exterior and induces diaphoresis, which is a great technical term for sweating. Our next formula is scallion drink with 7 ingredients, or Sangbai Qi Wei Yin. This formula is for exterior wind cold disorder with simultaneous blood or yin deficiency. So we've been talking about qi and yang deficiency. Now we're getting to blood and or yin deficiency. And again, it says blood or yin deficiency. And remember I said they're on a spectrum, so it's okay for it to say or. You don't have to be necessarily super specific, though it can be helpful. This is a relatively smaller formula and includes alii, fistulosi bulbus, sangbai, that's the green onion scallions, puraria radix or gogen, zingiberum rhizoma recens, shenjiang, so that's the fresh ginger again, Ophiopagonus radix, maimendong, that's a good yin tonic, and Romania radix shengdiwang, which is actually it cools the blood, but it also supports the blood. It also builds blood as well to a certain extent. And that's what this formula does. According to Scheid and his team, it nourishes the blood and releases the exterior. And Chen also say it releases the exterior and nourishes yin and blood, which is true. There's yin tonics in it, so it definitely nourishes the yin as well. Our next formula is modified Solomon's seal decoction. Oops, excuse me. Or Jiajian Wei Rue Tong. Tong, that's first tone. This is to treat externally contracted wind heat in a patient with underlying yin deficiency. So no blood deficiency, this is yin deficiency, and it's wind heat, which is interesting because yin deficiency will generally tend towards heat. So I think this is a fairly common, if you have yin deficiency and get a cold, it's will often be sort of a wind heat. So not always, like we just saw. And a few more herbs in this one. It includes Polygonati, Adoreati, Rhizoma or Yuju, Alii, Fistulosi bulbus, Sangbai, that's the green onion again, Platycodi radix, Jaegong. That's in the category of stop coughing, so that's an interesting one. We have our prepared soybeans again, Soja, Semen, Preparatum, Dandocher. We have our field mint, Methe, Haplocalicis, Herba Poha. We have Snatchy Atrati radix or Baiwei, Glycericerae radix preparata, Jurgansao. So this is licorice, but it's prepared licorice, honey fried licorice, Jurgansao. And we do have our Chinese dates, Jujube fructus dazao. Its actions include nourishes the yin, clears heat, and induces sweating and releases the exterior. Chen similarly say it nourishes yin and clears heat and releases the exterior and induces diaphoresis. They really like that, induces diaphoresis. Our next formula is 9 herb decoction with no top tier. Nope, yep. Nope, sorry, we're skipping that one. And then we have our next formula is our last one is ginseng perilla leaf decoction or shen su yin. This formula treats exterior wind cold syndrome with interior tan yin or phlegm retention with underlying qi vacuity. So this is interesting. So phlegm we actually think of as an excess condition, not necessarily a deficiency condition, but it's caused by deficiency often of pretty much of qi. So we have a qi vacuity with a lot of phlegm. Chen says this is a separate formula. However, Scheid and his team say it is an associated formula to Renshen Baidusan. So in other words, in the listings, they have the big formula, and then they'll often have listings of associated formulas. So maybe based on the same principles, maybe similar, maybe slight modifications, things along those lines. So this is the difference here. Chen says this is a separate formula. Scheid says it's actually an associated formula with Renshen Baidusan, which was the first formula that we talked about today. So based on Renshen Baidusan, it maintains many of the same herbs while replacing others. And rather than say, this is out, this is in, I'm just reading all of them again. So we have, this time Renshen is the first one. So ginseng radix, Renshen is the first herb. Perillifolium zisuye, again, this is a spicy herb to release the exterior. Puraria radix gogen, again, a spicy herb to release the exterior. Ginger fried Pinellia rhizoma preparatum or jiang ban sha. So ban sha is Pinellia ban sha is sort of the herb that most people will first think about for treating phlegm. So the fact that this is phlegm retention makes sense that ban sha is going to be in this. It is a toxic herb, which is why we ginger fry it, we prepare it. So that's there too. And then it's not toxic once it's prepared. We have Pusidani radix, Qianhu, which is similar, stopping cough or releasing, moving phlegm sort of herb. Poria or Fuling, which drains dampness, again, can help with phlegm. Glandia radix Muxiang is a moving herb, so it kind of moves things, breaks things up, moves it. Brown fried Oronti fructus or Fu Chao Zhirke, similar, that's a qi mover herb. Platycody radix, Jiegung, very good for stopping coughing. Again, if there's phlegm in the chest interior, there's going to be coughing in this condition, so it makes sense. And finally, we have Glycericerae radix preparata, Zhirgan Sao, that's that prepared, that honey-fried licorice. And it augments the qi, releases the exterior, harmonizes the stomach, and transforms phlegm. All right, and that's our formulas for today that we're discussing. Let's talk about the science briefly. It's hard to do a really good, thorough summary of all the science because these are very different herbs, formulas, and it takes me an hour or two per formula to look it up and to kind of get a grasp on it. Most of these are a little bit on the obscure side anyway. So Chen had a nice summary and said, okay, and he has scientific references, and he says exterior releasing formulas in general. So some of these may be for this specifically or not, but in general, exterior releasing formulas can treat cough, wheezing, and dyspnea. Dyspnea is trouble breathing, asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, respiratory tract disorders, nasal disorders, fever, common cold, influenza, and infectious disorders. And that makes sense. And I think most of those are going to be relatively similar with this particular subcategory. The one that I would have maybe a little bit was nasal disorders. That's a little bit too exterior for interior deficiencies. It's not that they won't happen in these patients, but I don't know how effective it is for the formulas specifically under supporting and releasing formulas are going to be for nasal disorders. There's nothing specific for it while And some of the exterior releasing formulas and other subcategories, there are specifics for that. Drug-herb interactions can be an issue, or several of the herbs in these formulas do have drug-herb interaction concerns. We have Gansal may increase blood pressure and potassium loss with diuretics. Fudza may induce cytochrome P450-3A4. That's one of our major targets that we look at for drug-herb interactions. As I mentioned, I have lots of courses on drug-herb interactions. We talk about cytochrome P450 quite a bit. 3A4 is the most common form of cytochrome P450 that's used in drugs and herbs. So if it affects 3A4, its potential for drug-herb interactions is much more than other types of cytochrome P450s, which we're going to see some other types in just a few. Of course, Ma Huáng shows numerous high-level evidence interactions, including when combined with caffeine and methylxanthines. Really, caffeine is a methylxanthine. The only other one that's kind of relevant is it's an old asthma drug that's not really used very much anymore, theophylline, but that's a methylxanthine as well. Antacids, there may be some sort of a effect. Monoamine oxidase inhibitors and tricyclic antidepressants. So an MAOI, or monoamine oxidase inhibitors, are antidepressants. There's a different type that can be used for other conditions, but generally we think of MAOIs as antidepressants, as well as many other D-level evidence interactions. I haven't really been saying the level of evidence here, but usually I don't list D-level evidence. That's the lowest level of evidence. Usually it's in animals, in just laboratory research, or just an opinion, learned an opinion, but just an opinion without any evidence behind it. That's the lowest level of evidence. Usually I like to, before I talk to you guys about it, to have at least C-level evidence. Ma Huáng actually has some B and A level evidence in some of these, so definitely up there. There's evidence that Renshen inhibits cytochrome P450 2C9, 2C19. Now those are pretty much the second and third most commonly used cytochrome P450s, but only about 10 to 20% of drugs might use those, while about up to 60% of drugs will use 3A4. And this does show evidence that it inhibits 2C9, 2C19, and 3A4. So we're more worried about the 3A4. It may also affect warfarin and digoxin levels as well, so you have to be careful when taking those drugs with Renshen. Those were case studies. They're C-level, but they are, a couple cases. So is it universal or not? We need more research to find out. Finally, Xinjiang, or that fresh ginger, appears to inhibit cytochrome P450 2C9, 2C19, and 3A4 as well. It may interact with anticoagulants. So definitely some potential for drug-herb interactions with fresh ginger. We do have some concerns, and again, these are sort of general concerns with these formulas, and specifically more about exterior releasing formulas. Some of these concerns aren't going to be relevant for our subcategory because we're kind of balancing them out, but let's see what they say. So this is from Chen, and they say exterior releasing formulas are generally taken as warm decoctions to induce perspiration. Mild perspiration over the whole body is ideal. The body may be covered with a blanket to ensure and facilitate perspiration. We already read this under Scheid's commentary. However, profuse sweating should be avoided since it may deplete qi and yin, and in severe cases cause qi or yang collapse. After taking the decoction, avoid exposure to wind to prevent recurrent attacks. Additionally, avoid foods that are raw, cold, oily, or greasy, as they may decrease absorption and compromise the therapeutic effects of these formulas. If interior symptoms are observed along with exterior symptoms, the normal treatment plan is to treat the exterior first, then the interior condition second, or treat both interior and exterior conditions at the same time. And that's what we're doing here with these formulas, is that specifically, treating them both at the exact same time. Exterior releasing formulas are contraindicated if the disease factor has fully progressed into the interior. These formulas are also contraindicated in the presence of ulcerated sores, erupted measles, deficiency type edema, and dehydration from vomiting or diarrhea. And that is our herbs of the day, the formulas of the day. We started our time together talking about the most foundational, almost the Bible of Chinese medicine, the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng, or the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon. Then we did an overview of formulas that release the exterior, and more specifically, supporting and releasing formulas, or formulas that release the exterior disorders with interior deficiency. As usual, we look at some of the science, drug-herb interactions, and cautions of this category in general. And basically, we covered a lot of important ground today, so good introduction to this subcategory. In our next episode, we will be looking at another Chinese herb, Mi Meng Hua, or Buddleia flower bud. This is an herb in the herbs that drain fire subcategory of the herbs that clear heat category. So the overall category is herbs that clear heat, and this is one of several subcategories, herbs that drain fire. So this is a very cooling herb, drains fire. While not one of the most commonly used of Chinese herbs, it still has some interesting uses, especially when it comes to the liver and the eyes. Join us as we look at this herb as well. As usual, exploring something a little different. It's going to be another interesting and terrific episode in our next exciting episode of Spurbs Herbs. As usual, I'd like to say thank you very much. If you like this podcast, please do us a favor. Give us a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast app. We would be eternally grateful. And we thank you. You can always get in touch with me at drgreg@spurbsherbs.com or at our website, www.spurbsherbs.com. And Spurbs Herbs is SPERBSHERBS.com. So I had a question when we were talking about the Huáng Dì Nèi Jīng. We were talking, the question was, can I do the quote on the female side? Because I did the male side, but not the female side. And frankly, that was in an old presentation of mine as I was doing. I was like, oh yeah, we should do the female side of this. But I don't know, I'm trying to pull it up on the internet. I don't have it in right off the top. But so let me see if I can find that. Yeah, it's right here. It's in chapter 1. So I think I'll try and read that if I can here. Oh no, it was in chapter. Oh no, there it is. There it is. Okay, I got it. Let me see. This is from straightbamboo.com. And here we go. Okay, so here's the quote from that. And I don't know who actually translated this. It's straightbamboo.com/universal-truth. And the reason, remember, this is chapter 1. It's called the Universal Truth. So that's why they're saying that here. So here is, so Huáng Dì asked, when one grows old, one cannot bear children. Is this due to hereditary or to the loss of one's procreative energy? And Shibo answered, in general, the reproductive physiology of woman is such that at 7 years of age, her kidney energy becomes full, her permanent teeth come in, and her hair grows long. At 14 years, the Tian Kui, or fertility essence, matures. That Tian Kui is menses, or fertility essence, matures. The Ren conception and Chong vital channels responsible for the conception open, menstruation begins, and conception is possible. At 21 years, the kidney energy is strong and healthy, the wisdom teeth appear, and the body is vital and flourishing. At 28 years, the bones and tendons are well developed, and the hair and secondary sex characteristics are complete. This is the height of female development. At 35 years, the yang ming, stomach and large intestine channels that govern the major facial muscles begin to deplete. The muscles begin to atrophy, facial wrinkles appear, and the hair begins to thin. At 42, all 3 yang channels, taiyang, xiaoyang, and yangming, are exhausted. The entire face is wrinkled, and the hair begins to turn gray. At 49 years, the Ren and Chong channels are completely empty, and the Tian Kui has dried up. Hence, the flow of the menses ceases, and the woman is no longer able to conceive. So 49, that's basically menopause, is what it's saying there, at age 49. So there's there's that quote. So I'm glad I got to put that in. And so that was at the end here, a little bonus for y'all. Thank you again. And as usual, I have my extensive bibliography. The proceeding was presented by Dr. Greg Sperber. We would like to thank Janelle for all her support and everybody else who contributed to this program.
Janelle.
Timothy Dobbins.
Roger Campbell.